With that, now let's turn to Ntiyiso Consulting Group Chief Advisor Miyelani Holeni, who has been looking at this for some time now, and has got some detail on it, and has drafted some kind of understanding as to the impact of this, particularly on the revenue collection of municipalities. Before we get there, Miyelani, good evening, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Thabo, and good evening to the listeners.
Drug lords and the illegal occupation of government buildings. We know, for example, that that one building yesterday where there was a sting operation, we found there even a police officer, we found there even a well-connected political figure as part of whatever operation that was going on there. It's still going to be, I suppose, ventilated out in our courts. But is it just drug lords? Are they behind this influx in illegal occupation of government buildings?
I think it's a myriad of issues here. I think let's admit that where there's lawlessness or where there's a breakdown of enforcement of law, there can be multiple situations that will develop. There will be chance takers, there will be opportunists, there will be criminality, and a host of other things. But I think in the middle of all of this are some people who are very desperate for housing, are people who are looking for coming to a city to make a living and to be able to get out of the destitute situation. So there are a number of cases that we can look at this one. So we can divide it into those categories. Because there's lawlessness and these buildings have been hijacked, it tends to be that, they've been taken advantage of. But you also find, in some of the research that we've done that there are people who are genuinely looking for decent housing or to be able to get housing where they can get by and look for a job or to be able to hold down at least accommodation which is closer to where their jobs are, so that at least they can afford to live. So it's a myriad of issues that are involved here, and most of them social. However, the impact, as you indicated, can be far-reaching.
Of the 8 metro municipalities, let's just start there. Would there be one that would say, where we govern, there are no hijacked buildings? Because sometimes people tend to say that where we govern, things run better.
Happened, absolutely. What has happened is that the outward migration of corporations from city centers into the north, south, and whichever areas. And you can count, for instance, in the city of Johannesburg, you can count all the towns, Ekurhuleni, city of Tshwane, and city of eThekwini, and all of these towns where, for instance, the strategy to look after the inner city was reached a point where there was no credible strategies, or at least there was no maintenance of the city center. The planning in terms of the city center was now restrictive, and so on and so forth. So I think it goes into the fact that, wherever the planning and the city planning aspects as well have not been very active, there is outward migration to look for better office places, which are safer or which are easier to access from a traffic control point of view and a transportation point of view. So you can look across South Africa in terms of the various towns. The problem does exist. In some cases it will be at a smaller scale, but in the large cities it will tend to be pronounced, because there are much more buildings that are even abandoned by the private owners. So the issue here is that there are, of course, municipal-owned buildings, there's buildings owned by government, which is public works, and there's privately owned buildings which are abandoned for reasons that perhaps the owners are not able to carry the costs of property rates and electricity and so on and so forth, and have resorted to abandoning them. So it is a widespread project issue that we've seen. You can take Nelson Mandela Bay, which has older buildings. You can also take Buffalo City. So the issue is actually a national issue that we need to look at it across the board, with looking at how we generate plans to resuscitate truly the inner city, and also look at social housing that is going to be a mix of units that can at least be funded and be able to rejuvenate the city centre.
So it's rental revenue that is lost, it's property rates, as you put it. There's illegal connection of water and electricity. We're hearing people who are saying, we're just staying for free. We get water and electricity here for free. What's the cost in terms of revenue lost?
Well, I think if you look at, the leakages that we are seeing, and particularly for the fact that, for the first time in many years, most of the cities as well are in some sort or form or shape in some sort of arrears with paying their ESCOM account. That should be able to tell you that the revenue collection is also impacted quite significantly. Electricity is used, quite, widely for cooking and all of those things, and lighting. Water is a basic human rights necessity. So you can already see that, the fact that the cities and municipalities are struggling to keep up with paying ESCOM as well as their water supplier. It means that, that impact is that much greater. Again, looking at the decaying infrastructure within the cities, it means that if the cities are not able to get the revenue that is required, maintenance tends to suffer as well, or repairs and maintenance, as it were. So the issue of illegal connections is actually wider than just looking at the fact that there's one building which has been hijacked, because it can spread all across, even to the residential areas where even illegal connections tend to be done. So the issue of losses or leakages in terms of revenue within municipalities is a vast issue, and it's one that also requires urgent attention, together with the fact that there are buildings which have been abandoned as well and are owing vast sums of money.
Yeah. But do the municipalities have a handle on the leakages? Do they, for example, do they know how much they are losing that they otherwise could be making into the city? Because, I mean, if you were to do the sums and you sit and you look at that, it would at least spur you towards wanting to rectify this so you can be able to collect that revenue and be able to fund service delivery.
I think what we've been seeing currently is the fact that, and I think the issue of capability is now coming to the fore, because we've been talking about the issue of capability in managing the revenue value chain, in managing service delivery, in managing the governance, or at least having a credible governance, structure. So the issue of capability, which is defined very simply as, do you have a strategy to be able to get out of the difficult situations that you are in? Or do you have a strategy to take you into the next era? Do you have the kind of leadership as well as the management capability and the skills and the people to be able to drive those plans forward and to drive the city forward? And do you have the capacity and the capability to deliver the services in that way? So what we are seeing is that the capability aspect, as well as the breakdown in the value chains within municipalities, is costing municipalities quite a lot of money, and it's setting them back, quite significantly in terms of the development and the gains that were made. So most of the municipalities, unfortunately, may not have a full handle of where things are at, because even their deployment of technology may not be as sophisticated as what it should be. So what we have seen as well with regards to our revenue benchmark maturity is we are seeing that, most of the municipalities are in the hustling category. They are literally hustling for the next rand that they are supposed to be collecting, and rightfully collecting for that matter. They are not moving on to the places where they are performing and they can be stars there. So we are seeing that lack of handle in most of the municipalities. The cities are way better. However, they can also do better with regards to tightening the governance as well as automation of processes that can assist in driving the revenue and to be able to cover and recover the gains that we are seeing there. So you will hear now a lot of municipalities talking about revenue enhancement as a knee-jerk reaction, as opposed to as part of a progression of a strategy that they should be applying or should have applied perhaps 5 years ago, and consistently updating it as they go through the various administrations.
It's obviously piercing a huge hole into the coffers of the cities and probably having some degree of impact. Certainly we know a number of metros that are struggling with liquidity issues. How does this play out? How do they look, especially from lenders and credit rating societies?
I think revenue for municipalities, and this is a crucial point as well, municipalities being autonomous entities or business entities within government also rely on the capital markets to raise funding for their capital projects or their various expansion projects. We've seen the credit ratings decline over the years because of not being able to maintain the steady stream of revenue across the value chain, as well as other issues that they are facing. So it becomes a double whammy, because on the one side the revenue is declining due to leakages, and the ability to borrow from the market has also declined because of the poor credit ratings, especially for the cities which are rated. But also the other municipalities which may not be rated are not showing the kind of liquidity and cash flow that maybe assist them to be able to borrow, to be able to get over the difficulties that are facing. So there's a double whammy situation which says, let's get the strategic part of, or the capability part of getting the value chains to work, and that would start, to drive the attractiveness of municipalities, improve the cash flow, such that the lenders can also crowd in and be able to help the municipalities to get over the difficulties that they are facing. So it's a two-pronged approach that needs to be approached, and I think it's one that the financial institutions that are banking those municipalities can also play a greater role with regards to improving their balance sheets, and also applying simple tactics that can help them to claw back whatever the difficulties are. The one example we always give and we hear is that property rates are owing as well. And property rate is it's a good source of income for municipalities. Most of the houses within municipalities are bonded in some form or shape to a financial institution. Why are they not coming in and supporting and assisting municipalities to collect those property rates through the collection of the same repayment of the bonds and so on? So those are some of the tactics that we believe that could be applied, not as a knee-jerk reaction, but as a formalized process of helping the collections.
Speaking of tactics and knee-jerk reaction, one of the questions that's beginning to emerge now is whether or not a inquiry, I want to say a commission of inquiry, maybe it is, into hijacked buildings, is it going to help us with anything?
Well, I think the inquiry, if it's a form of a research, I think it will do a lot, because it can at least open the can of, or at least pull the veil from what most of us do not see. If it's a research that is aimed at providing solutions, we believe that it can take the municipalities forward. If it's also research that is going to be backed up by the capital, is one that will help quite a lot. We know that, government, sitting with, for instance, the various DFIs within government, particularly the likes of the Development Bank of Southern Africa, those ones are the municipalities that have a mandate to fund, cities, to fund emerging towns. Perhaps, it's with a view like that, because to have an inquiry just for the sake of understanding the dynamics may not help that much, but it must be able to deliver the capital to go and assist those municipalities to revamp or rejuvenate those buildings if they are owned by the municipality, or if they've been abandoned, perhaps a scheme that will help them to revamp them and release them into the markets, or get, a triple Ps or partners within them. So whatever inquiry that is required, it must be one that generates solutions that says, we will go the route of social housing, we will also have triple Ps, We will also have corporates that can adopt, certain buildings, because some of those buildings were once owned by thriving corporates that have moved into other areas. So I think an inquiry of such a nature must be research-based, must be empirical, and must be based on solutions that can be achieved momentarily in terms of the milestones that can be set.
Ntiyiso Consulting Group Chief Advisor, Miyelani Holeni. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on tonight here on In Focus.